basically shifted the solution of security problem for Ukraine to Europe. The only common ground between EU and NATO allies is the need to further help the Zelenskyy regime without regard to the American partners. However, they didn't identify the sources of financing. There were attempts by Scandinavia and the Baltic lobbyists to do it by seizing Russian assets, but that was strictly opposed by the top EU countries, because after that, nobody would take them seriously as a place where the assets could be kept. On the 24th of February, Kyiv hosted the so-called International Summit supporting Ukraine, dedicated to the third anniversary of the beginning of the special military operation. It engaged Ursula von der Leyen, EU Council head Antonio Costa, accompanied by virtually all European commissioners, leaders of Russophobic Western community from the Baltic states, Canada, Denmark, Ireland, Finland, and so on. The US was not present. The guest list also included former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson. He forced the Kyiv regime to abandon negotiations in 2022, and he doomed the Ukrainians to the killings, to the death, and clearly he came there to make sure that his idea to have a war till the last Ukrainians is still alive. Hawks that came to Kyiv dropped statements on another packages of military assistance. They pompously promised that they will not leave Ukraine high and dry, and it's not important that they did the same many years ago as they prompted the citizens of Ukraine to make a Maidan, to have a coup d'etat that was unconstitutional, then to a civilian standoff, and then there was a chain of provocations that put Ukraine into the abyss of conflict. Ursula von der Leyen promised that in March the EU will give 3.5 billion euros to the Nazi regime. The biggest contribution was pledged by the UK and Canada. Also not lagging behind was Spain, Norway, Denmark, and Switzerland. They promised some 1.8 billion euros. And certainly the EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, Kaja Kallas, tried to upstage everyone. On the 24th of February, she claimed that the most solid and the cheapest security guarantee would be Ukraine's NATO membership. And the alliance per se would only benefit from Ukraine filling its ranks, namely by including the most powerful army of Europe. That's how she described the Ukrainian armed forces. And to clarify that, she showcased a banner that was given to her by the 36th separate Marine Brigade of the Ukrainian armed forces that participated in the fighting in Mariupol. That is not cynicism, that is a blatant criminal immorality. And it all shows that these representatives of the war party continue to cling on to this confrontation line, and they care solely about the interest of their heaven blissful garden on Ukrainian membership into NATO. Another statement on hypothetical Ukrainian membership into the alliance was made by Zelenskyy. Why do they do that? A number of get-togethers and a great number of participants, the same copy-pasted statements and speeches, absurd motives. Why do they do that? They do it to showcase that it's not as bad as it seems, but everybody understands the reality. They make it seem as if they can improve something, that it's not over yet, they can still keep it afloat. They would keep themselves afloat, given their quality, but the situation is a dead-end street. In his statement at the so-called International Summit in Kyiv on the 24th of February, Zelenskyy said if Ukrainian membership into NATO would remain closed, then Ukraine will have no other choice but to build NATO in Ukraine. Besides ensuring such financing, such troops and defense industry that would mean guaranteed peace. End of quote. The Kyiv regime clearly intends to ensure such building at the expense of Europeans, and Western European regimes do not tell that to their citizens. Let us remind you that that's the way it began. This was the trigger so that this domestic inter-Ukrainian standoff could be a concern for the European security when the Ukraine was turned into NATO foothold. What kind of peace are we talking about if such ideas prevail? This would lead to an unparalleled confrontation and escalation of the conflict with dire security consequences. Let me once again highlight that genuine, just and sustainable solution to the conflict is not possible without complete and irreversible uprooting of the root causes. One of the main root causes is the fact that the West refused to live up by its commitments not to expand NATO, and there was a show play to mark the visit of the European bureaucrats entitled "Let Us Bring the Zelenskyy Legitimacy Back." We're talking about Rada and what happened there on the 24th and 25th of February. I don't want to comment on that because clearly that is a show, definitely. But this show probably has another goal: to distract Ukrainian citizens from the fact that the drafting age will be lowered down even further in Ukraine. Because the state of affairs in the Ukrainian armed forces is deteriorating, and that is something that Ukrainians are not told about. They are only told about European officials that come and go and promise bright future for the citizens of Ukraine. They need to put down these photos, these pictures, and to look at the window, what life shows them, and not the cinema performed by NATO, about the losses of the Ukrainian personnel. Instead of that, they use different tactics. The Kyiv junta is considering lowering down the drafting age in mid-February. As you know, a new form of drafting was announced for men of age, namely yearly contracts for volunteers. We need to understand that as they sign these conditions, the young people will get a one-way ticket. The so-called choice is confined to 6 infantry brigades that are at the forefront.
This is not computer technologies that are used or within the framework of cyber forces. This is very important. I'll reiterate that. Those are 6 infantry brigades in the front lines. Probably for a civilian, it is not really clear what we're talking about. But those who understand what it means, the infantry brigade, it is clear. Those boys who are drafted in Ukraine, it will mean a momentous, disastrous death. They will be sent for slaughter. Amid all this, the right sector there were a lot of materials published in the social media, went even further. In the city of Dnepropetrovsk, they put out notices and started to recruit 14-year-old teenagers who had to prepare to kill enemies. The war started by the West, aimed to deplete Ukraine, to strip it of future generations. But for what? To make it more comfortable to give it all away. The sum of bribes that the military commissioners receive is very telling. If the states pay them $100, then they receive $500 to pay off on the streets. Since the determined seize on February 28th, military commissioners will get a lot of money, and those who cannot pay off and do not want to die for junta, probably they will be killed from the military brigades of the Ukrainian army. The information about such cases was disclosed by the fighter of the 3rd Separate Assault Brigade of the Ukrainian Army. All these facts, they mean that the aims of the special military operation are declared not in vain, and all of them will be achieved, as the Russian leadership said many times. The Westerners, they suffer not only from Russophobia, but also against those who think that relationship with our country is a norm or even a priority. Let's see what happened to the president of the Serb Republic, Dodik. We commented on it already, but we want to give more information about it. We share outrage of the public in the Balkans after the court of Bosnia and Herzegovina pronounced a guilty verdict to the President of the Serb Republic, Milorad Dodik. It is another case when policy prevailed over the law. He only fulfilled his duty under the Constitution, and this was interpreted as the violation, quote, all state legislation, end of quote. That's how the people from the Bosnian justice try to describe their pseudo laws of the German citizen Schmidt. The verdict on this case is illegal and can have no legal consequences. It is clear it is aimed at removing the leader of the Serbian nation from the political scene. His policy is principled and patriotic, and it contradicts the Euro-Atlantic ideas. We support the efforts of the authorities of the Serb Republic to defend the constitutional status of the Republic under the 1995 General Framework Agreement for Peace in Bosnia and Herzegovina for the fundamental principles of sovereignty and territorial integrity of the country, equal rights of three state-forming nations. The Russian Federation, as the permanent member state of the UN Security Council, as a guarantor of the peace agreement, uses all political measures at hand to prevent the situation developing in a negative way and neutralize threats of inter-ethnic dialogue, peace, stability, and threats that can appear in the state and in the Balkans in general, as well as to attract additional attention of the international community to the situation and to bring the situation back to the Dayton framework. One more thing. We took note of demands of the US to upload tankers with Russian oil until 20 February 27, these were demands against India. I would like to say that India officially did not join illegitimate restrictions against Russia initiated by the US and its satellites against Russian energy. Given special strategic character of the Russia-India partnership, as well as interests of Russian oil and gas sector, we deem unnecessary and counterproductive to comment on the statements of Washington. But I would like to yet again underline things that we talked many times. Russia denies the unilateral restrictions and measures to put pressure, including against energy, behind the sanction policy of the West. There's a new colonial aspiration to ensure economic advantage and to push other actors and players from world energy markets. We base our cooperation in energy sphere on interests of global energy security, and we responsibly fulfill our contracts and agreements. The third Economic Caspian Forum took place in Tehran on February 17. The event was attended by Prime Minister of Azerbaijan, First Vice President of Iran, Prime Minister of the Republic of Kazakhstan, Deputy Chairman of the Cabinet of Ministers of Turkmenistan. Within the forum, there were 6 round tables. They were dedicated to prospects of the development of trade, industry, agriculture. During the Russian delegation representatives took part in those discussions. Following the event, a joint communique was issued where the leaders of national delegation showed interest to strengthen interaction of the Caspian states. They welcomed the proposal to conduct meetings about trade in Iran until 2025. The participants of the meeting were thankful for the host to the high level of organization and hospitality. The forum confirmed their stance of the Caspian states to develop interaction. We took note of a number of comments in the Telegram channels that were almost staged. They concerned the resolution of the General Assembly dedicated to the glorification of Nazism. This is an important initiative condemning Nazism in all their manifestations. It is a product of a 20-year work at the UN. For the first time, it was put forward in 2005. It had only a couple of paragraphs and was supported by less than 10 co-sponsors. The promotion of approaches at the international platforms take time. There's no opportunity to, realize all the results overnight. With time, the document received the title that directly explain the essence of the initiative. It is the countering the glorification of Nazism. It received the text. The text became more comprehensive and reflects the position of our country. It expresses serious concern regarding the war against monuments of fighters with Nazism and soldiers liberators, including the desecration and demolition In some countries, it became a state policy. It confirmed the SS and all its units as a military organization under the verdict of the Nuremberg Tribunal. At the same time, it expresses outrage about torchlight processions and marches to glorify Nazis. This list also includes the inauguration of memorials, renaming of schools and other facilities in honor of those who fought on the side of Nazis. It's concerned about the attempts to nationalize those who fought in the anti-Hitler coalition during World War II. It condemns the attempts of certain countries to prohibit symbols associated with the victory of Nazism. This negatively influences children and is completely incompatible with the commitments of the UN member states under the UN Charter. Such actions fall under Article 4 of the International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination. It demands to fight all these manifestations up to prohibiting them by the criminal law. Thus, the result of consistent and perennial work of the Russian delegation, and this continued during all those years, was the endorsement at the UN level of all approaches, principles for us and other like-minded states to do with the preservation of historical truth and countering attempts to falsify the outcomes of the World War II. It is important. Now, 40 countries from all regions of the world are co-sponsors. It is important that it was thematical. It doesn't mention any countries, and the fact that some countries recognized themselves as in the mirror in the text and continue to do so only means that they have these problems at the national level. It's no surprise that the document faces serious resistance from our opponents. This is of utmost importance for those who write about it. Over 20 years, the US, Canada, Japan, Great Britain, Switzerland, Australia, Norway, Ukraine, and the EU countries always voted against or abstained from voting and attempted to make countries of the Global South not to support it. For many of them, the country in this particular text became the main issue. It would be funny if it wasn't so sad. The main aim in the discussions at the UN in 2022, their attack against the resolution a little changed. They failed during the voting, so they decided to use another tactic of the procedural provocation to spread the anti-Russian paragraph about inadmissibility to justify the territorial aggression against Ukraine. They used all their transatlantic solidarity to do so. Why did they wanted to do it? They wanted to make us, Russia, to refuse from the document. They dreamt about it. They talked about it openly, even. Russia, in case it was fulfilled, wound up in the company with those who prevented the endorsement of the text by the General Assembly. This paragraph does not make the text of the resolution acceptable for our opponents. They understand that the resolution is still the same, so they continue to vote against it anyways. But they have another goal. They wanted to this text to disappear. In this situation, Russia, together with like-minded states, decided not to give in to this provocation. Every year, we put forward this paragraph up to the voting. And when it is endorsed, we distance officially ourselves from this paragraph that is unacceptable for us. It is reflected in the protocol of the session of the UN General Assembly. It is stored in the UN archives and is available on all resources of the organization. I would like to draw your attention to this fact. Neither Russia nor other co-sponsors are not tied by the text of this paragraph. When we never talked about supporting it, we work steadily against this provocation and this unacceptable paragraph for those with common sense. It loses support, and we hope that it will be eliminated in the nearest future. And this meticulous work gives fruit. In 2022, 63 countries voted for it, 23 against, 65 countries abstained. But last time, in December 2024, the number of voters remained the same, but the number of opponents almost doubled. Against, 41 delegations were against, 50 abstained. We're convinced that Russia shouldn't give up its positions in the fight against glorification of Nazism at the UN. But where are we to fight, if not in the country, in the organization that appeared following the destruction of Nazism? Not always victory comes immediately, and we don't always manage to achieve our goals immediately, but we have to fight. And sometimes we have to combine both desire to settle the situation momentarily and meticulous work. We fight through diplomatic means for the interests of our country, but we also unite the international community on this important issue. We continue working on the resolution, not a week before it is up to the voting. We fight the amendment to the resolution, not an hour before the voting, but every day. Did those provocators know about it, including in the Russian information space? They did not. Do you want to help? Let us unite our capabilities, potential, and resources. I'm talking about the media resources who mentioned this topic only one time.
Do you want to cooperate? Just address us, say that, or maybe we will say that to you. I would like to say that all these speeches by representatives of the delegations are openly published. Russian diplomats have commented in detail what I have mentioned just now to different media outlets. They have clarified procedural aspects, substantial issues connected with our activities in the UN, and we're grateful to journalists, bloggers, and experts who cover this issue highly professionally. We intend to continue to make efforts to counter the historical aggression against our country, unleashed by some countries. One more important issue. We have had several brief announcements today, and we will provide a detailed material after the briefing and in the briefing text. There will be the second stage of the SCO International Chess Tournament. We have already mentioned its first stage during the briefing on the 18th of December 2024. There were more than 3,000 people from more than 10 SCO countries. it will be possible to participate both online and offline. The second stage will be joined by even more participants, and there will be another stage of the tournament on My Chess platform, and there will be participants from more than 15 countries. The final of the tournament will take place in July 2025. We will provide links in the text of the today briefing, and we invite all the chess players to participate in this landmark event. On the soon it will be an anniversary of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, and we will publish a detailed material on our website. And cultural humanitarian cooperation from the 26th of February until the 2nd of March. Now